So, a very good evening, everyone, and warm welcome from School of Management and Entrepreneurship, IIT Jodhpur. So, in continuation to our ongoing Tech MBA master classes conducted by the in-house faculty members of SME IIT Jodhpur, I, Professor Abhishek Sharma, take this opportunity to welcome you to our 8th session on Tech MBA master classes. So today we have with us Dr. Akanksha Chaudhary. Dr. Akanksha Chaudhary is a faculty in the area of economics at School of Management and Entrepreneurship, IIT Jodhpur. Dr. Akanksha holds a PhD in economics from School of Management, IIT Bombay. She was awarded IIT Bombay's prestigious Excellence in Research Award for her doctoral research. Her area of expertise and research is predominantly in development economics, education and health economics, public policy, and gender studies with a special focus on mobility studies. Her research work has been published in leading journals such as PLOS ONE, Social Indicators Research, and International Journal of Social Economics. And she has also presented her work in various international conferences. And so all of us welcome you, Dr. Akansha, and looking forward for your session. The session is going to be on big data economics. So over to you, Professor Akansha.
Thank you, Professor Abhishek, for such a warm welcome. In fact, I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of School of Management and Entrepreneurship. And so thank you guys for joining us today for this session. And we're going to talk about, or we're rather going to interact on big data economics. So I think just now Professor Abhishek mentioned that he's pretty excited about this. And I hope many of you also are excited about this topic. And I hope I'm able to do justice to your excitement for this topic. So let's begin with that. So talking about data and big data. So we today are living in an era where every device is online, where sensors are ubiquitous. I mean, you can find it everywhere in our world, generating continuous streams of data. The volume of data is growing exponentially every second, and the big data is the emerging field where innovative technology offers new ways of extracting values from the tsunami of the new information we are living in. Now, so now moving on to the interesting questions about the big data. So now, I mean, I see people asking questions. Okay, so when the name suggests it's a big data, so how big is really this big data? Or what exactly is this big data? Or why this big data is so important? Or how, what are the economic perspectives of this big data? So in today's class, I'll try to look into that. So in today's master class, we will try to seek answers to these certain questions related to big data from an economics perspective. And it is not practically possible to teach you all the different, concepts and methods in one lecture. But what we can try to do is, or what the purpose of the lecture is going to be, impress upon you that why it is exciting to learn these concepts, and which I hope will motivate you to take up further courses in big data or in this domain. So what exactly is big data? So just to give you, I mean, the digital platforms are flooded with these kind of definitions, but just to give you few of those which I personally like big data is high volume, high velocity and high variety assets that require new forms of processing to enable enhanced design, making, insight discovery and process optimization, which was given by a theorist, Lanny, in 2001. Moving on to another theorist or scientist, when the size of the data itself becomes part of the problem and the traditional techniques for working with data run out of steam. So that was given by Lucas in 2010. Another one Jacob in 2009 said, data which forces us to look beyond the tried and true methods that are prevalent at that time. So these were the few definitions. So to put it simply, big data refers to enormous data set gathered from numerous sources, and these data set cannot be collected, stored, processed, or they cannot be used using any of the existing conventional ways or conventional tools due to their quantity and the complexity. So we need special skills, we need special technologies to process these data and make meaning out of these unorganized large data set which we are flooded in today's world. Now let's move on to the very interesting question, which is how big is this big data really? So just to give a perspective, the data footprints of human, so it's like 44 zettabytes is the projected volume of global IT traffic by 2020. And you can see 2.3 zettabytes is the kind of volume of data that humans are producing every day. So this is the kind of volume we are looking at when we are talking about big data. Now we are looking at the size and the volume of the big data, right? So now why are we even talking about it? Because there is a lot of revenue associated to it. So now let's try to look at what exactly is there when it comes to revenue. So in 2019, the big data and business analytics solution was worthy of about $189 billion, and it is projected to grow as big as $274 billion by 2022. So that was like, how massive it is. Now, today, if I have to just, add something to showcase how really big is this big data. So today, if somebody gets into, downloading this data, so today it would take a person approximately 181 million years to download all the data from the internet. And probably it has already increased in the time, I have taken. Every minute it is increasing, because every minute new data is getting into the Steam. Now I've just tried to showcase how massive it is, but now let me come to the important parameters which can be used to differentiate or showcase how big is really this big data. So for that, there are numerous ways. So I'll be basically focusing on the 3 V's, which is considered an important way to showcase how big is this big data really. So for that, for 3 V's, we have volume, velocity, and variety. So when I talk about volume, it's massive. So I've been already discussing about volume in the past few slides. So the volume of data is massive. And for example, like we can talk about global supply chain, or we can talk about global financial analysis. So that is the kind of data which is coming in the stream every second, every minute across the globe. So it is very high on volume. Now, it's not just high on volume, it has velocity, it has speed, it's not static. So it has some speed. So any conventional data, so you must have heard about surveys and data collection. So if once the data is collected, it is for that particular period, but that is how we are differentiating big data here. So the big data has a velocity. It is dealing with streams of high frequency of incoming real-time data. For example, electronic trading, or let me just give you a very simple example. Today, you're using Google Maps in your phone, and it is asking you if it can track your location. I'm sure it asks you that. There are several settings for that. So if you have said, okay, please, okay, you can track me even when you're not using the app. So every minute there is some data going on. Every step you're taking in, it's giving some data in that stream. So it has a velocity. It's constantly increasing. It's constantly moving. Now that was about the second V. Now move to the variety. It has a variety of data. It is very diverse. So the range of data types, sources dealing with data using different syntactic formats. So this is the kind of this is one way to showcase how big is really this big data. It will have lots of volume, velocity, and variety. Now, when we are talking about variety, we can probably broadly categorize data into two parts. Probably one can be a long data and another one can be a wide data. So when I say long data, it means data of numerous crores of people, millions, billions, trillions of people for a particular thing, especially the data which is used by social scientists. Let's say I'm particularly interested in knowing the educational standards of people in a country. So I will have a category which is, I will have a variable which is number of years of education, and then for that one variable I will have the information of those crores, millions, trillions of people, right? So it will be a long data. Then that is the kind of data uh, which is used by the social scientists. But then there is another kind of data which too has a lot of variety, and that is a wide data, which is generally used by the firms or businesses to understand the people's behavior or people's choices. For example, there is a firm which is into consumer goods. So they try to understand my behavior, what all I consume, or what all my preferences are. So for that, it will be a wide data. So I on the one side they'll be having one consumer, and then they'll be having numerous preferences of that one consumer. So that is about the wide data. So these are the kind of data we are dealing with when we are talking about variety in the big data. Now moving on to being an economics student of economics from long time, I always try to look at the economic aspect in each and everything I come across. So now I'll take you guys through the economic aspect of the big data as well. So the data has become a new factor of production. So like any other factor of production, big data is also a new factor of production in the same way as hard assets or human capital the firms have. So now look at what kind of asset it is. So the big data is an intangible asset. We cannot really touch it. We cannot really see it, but it is an asset to the firm. It has high fixed costs and low marginal costs. So when I say it has high fixed cost and low marginal cost, I mean to say, so what are fixed costs? Fixed costs are the costs which a firm incurs, anyways has to incur, and it does not really vary with the quantity which they're producing. So if I'm producing 5 units of a good, and if I'm producing a 6 unit of a good, my fixed cost is going to remain same. So the firms, when the firms are making use of big data, they'll be having high fixed costs. But once they have incurred that cost, the marginal cost will be really low. So every time they want to increase the production or the kind of units they're producing, it will not make a change on that cost which they are paying for the big data. So it requires high fixed costs. So when we are talking about high fixed costs, that means it will give some comparative advantage to the large firms. Now, let me just give you perspective for that. So, a lot of research goes on in understanding consumer behavior, consumer preferences, and a lot of research goes on to understand. If you have heard about this targeted marketing or targeted branding, or things like that in today's world, so they are all done by research. So a large firm probably can afford to do that, but a smaller firm will not be able to do that kind of research, or will not have that kind of resources to make use of this big data and make use in such a way they can enhance their profit levels. So that way, the large firms will have a comparative advantage over the smaller firms in that industry. Now, when we are talking about comparative advantage, here I see another comparative advantage. And I consider myself fortunate to be housed in a IIT ecosystem, because probably a standalone institute or standalone B school will probably not be able to, if let's say me being a social scientist want to do a research which requires big data, I may not be able to have that kind of infrastructure required to do that kind of study if I'm part of a standalone B school. But because I'm part of a larger IIT ecosystem, we have people from various diverse background with different kind of expertise, and we have various laboratories. So there I can find somebody who probably has expertise in this, and I can collaborate and I can do that. So this is the kind of comparative advantage we have being a part of the larger ecosystem also. And just to bring in fact, the new education policy also talks about this comparative advantage to the large institutes. So the kind of facilities or kind of resources we want to provide to the students of our country, that is only possible if we have interdisciplinary approach. Like we create some kind of resources, some kind of facilities for the student, and then we have very high fixed cost in that, and then we have a lot of students coming in and making the most out of the services which are being provided. So that is what our new education policy also talks about. I mean, sorry, being a economist, I always puts in a lot of things in whenever I'm talking about tech as well. So please bear with me for that. Unlike tradition, so now moving on to another economic aspect of the big data. So unlike traditional assets, big data does not suffer from transactional limitations. So when I say transactional limitation, that means somebody, let's say if the big data is being used here, it cannot be used somewhere else. So that's what transaction limitation means. Like, if let's say there is one aeroplane which is being used to take people from, let's say, Jodhpur to Mumbai, the same airplane cannot be used to move people from Jodhpur to Delhi, because it will have a transactional limitation. Similarly, if let's say doctor is an asset to a hospital, so the same doctor cannot do multiple surgeries at same time. But big data for that matter gives a lots of advantage. Like if let's say today, I being a social scientist, I'm using big data to understand some demographics of our country, same data set can be used at some other place by, let's say, some medical researcher who's trying to understand some health behavior of the people of that place. So that way it does not really suffer from transactional limitation. Besides, it does not depreciate with usage. In fact, it appreciates with usage as it becomes more complete and accurate. So the more and more data we have, the more and more, so it will increase the reliability, accuracy. So it's like if I have data for 1 year, I can say something about people's behavior. But if I have data for 2 years, it's going to be even more accurate. I can probably make my comment about behavior of those people with more confidence. So that way it is appreciating with usage, and we are able to make more meaning out of that data. So like any other asset, it does not depreciate, it rather appreciates with usage. Now looking at, so that was big data as an intangible asset. Now look at big data as an information good. So now we're looking at as a good. So it is non-rival. So when I say non-rival, that means, so what exactly is rival? So rival, it will have some rival. Let's say today I'm consuming one apple. So when I'm consuming that apple, somebody had to give away. Yeah. Somebody wants to, I just heard somebody saying something. Okay. All right. Professor Abhishek, just let me know if you want me to stop anywhere or take some questions in between.
Sure.
Please let
Absolutely.
me know about that. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So when I talk about rivalry in goods, so let's say today I'm consuming one apple. So if I'm consuming that apple, somebody had to give away. I mean, no two people can consume that same apple. So that way, the data, big data for that matter, is having a property of non-rival. So I can use this big data, and same time, a medical researcher can also use that big data, and it's only partly excludable. A good or an asset is excludable if you can prevent somebody from using it. So we try to prevent it from people so that it cannot be misused, but otherwise it's probably the public data is probably more accessible to everyone, and you can try to conduct your own research, and you can try to know about some things you want to. So the content is non-rival and must be protected to be excludable. I mean, that's just one part of it. Now, just a minute. Yeah. So now looking at the allocative efficiency. So the collection of detailed data on consumer preferences facilitates the matching of firms and consumers, increasing output and consumption. So now it does a wonderful job in allocative efficiency. So all those exercises done by various firms using big data do a wonderful job in allocative efficiency. So if, let's say, I am today able to afford probably a Honda car, so whenever I'm doing anything online, anywhere on social media, the kind of advertisements which I'm seeing are probably going to be of cars in that same range. Probably it will not show me Ferrari. So that is the kind of magic we are able to do with using big data, because now this is bringing in efficiency for me as well as for the firm. So firm is not wasting their time in showcasing their advertisement to somebody who probably cannot afford, or who probably is not interested in buying that kind of good. Now, if let's say it's showing ads to me for Ferrari, I may get excited about it, but I would eventually, at the end of the day, I would not be buying that because I can't really afford that. So it's taking away my precious time. Instead, I can probably explore things which are in my range, which probably I can afford. So that is the kind of allocative efficiency it has. Besides, it also takes care of the consumer welfare. So the big data analytics to set prices based on consumer demographics or other market characteristics, creating opportunities for discriminatory pricing based on willingness to pay. So initially, in the earlier years, how pricing was done for products? Pricing was done for products on basis of how much cost the firms are incurring to produce that good and what kind of profit they are looking at. But right now, the dynamics is completely different. And these days, firms do a lot of research in pricing their products, and they price according to what consumers are willing to pay. So let us say if a firm is producing something in 20 rupees and does not do any market research, and just according and just anticipates probably want to make a profit of 80 rupees, so prices that product for, let's say, 100 rupees. So now if the prices that product for 100 rupees, probably there won't be any people interested in buying, and so the firm will probably not make any profits, will just have unattended stock lying in the warehouses. Now, when they are using big data to analyze people's behavior or people's preferences for that particular good and how much they are willing to pay, they probably understand 50 rupees is probably what people want to pay in this particular area for this particular good. So in that case, they can price that good at rupees 50, and they can probably sell all what they have produced and make huge profits there. So this is the kind of, and this is not just helping the firms, but this is also helping the consumers to have that good which they want to consume at the price which they are willing to pay. So this is bringing in consumer welfare as well. So now when a firm charges consumers different prices, those with high willingness to pay becomes worse off, while those with low willingness to pay become better off, as they can now purchase goods that could not afford to purchase previously under uniform pricing. So this is about price discrimination. So now the firms can try to understand, okay, this particular area, people have this kind of income levels, people have these kind of preferences, and this is what they're probably willing to pay. So at that particular place, firms can probably come up with products in that particular price level, and they can sell it at that price. And then there is another place where people have better income levels, whose preferences are slightly different from the other region. So their firms can have a different price levels and probably make larger profits by margin, and the other place probably firms can make larger profits by selling in large volumes. So this is the kind of studies which can be done and which can be really beneficial, not just for the consumer but for the firms as well. So that was about that was, you know, one part of looking at the economic aspects of big data. Now big data is also playing a huge role in looking at the societal problems. So apart from the societal problem, let me first take it to the inequality which it is creating amongst the firms. So now I previously said in one of the slides that large firms have a comparative advantage when we are living in a world of big data, because these large firms like Amazon, they can probably have large laboratories. They can have, in fact, recently Amazon hired a lot of data scientists, a lot of economists to do this kind of study, so that they can better price their products and they can take care of, you know, their inventories and their stocks. So it really helps. So it can make it easier for Amazon and firms like Apple to scale up using these technologies. Then for a smaller business, since large firms can spread the cost of these high-tech, you know, machinery, high-tech technology, skills which are required, probably people who know these kind of skills, large firms can spread the cost over many different products sold, whereas traditional assets like whereas these small firms probably cannot do that, because they will not be able to afford that. So the economic activity generates data as a byproduct of transactions, and only large firms generate more data, and that can induce economies of scale as well. So it has high fixed costs and low marginal costs. This economic property, tangible assets, give comparative advantage to the large firms. So that was about inequality amongst the firms, because we have big data. We have big data in our lives. Now let's look at the kind of inequalities which it is going to bring in for amongst the workers. So it certainly is going to create some inequality there as well. What kind of inequality we are looking at? So can I get some inputs from you guys here, because you guys are going to join some workforces. So let me just try to understand what you guys think. Is it going to create any kind of inequality among workers, because we are living in the world of big data? Okay, Professor Abhishek, can you let me know if in case somebody is typing in or would like to? Okay, so I can see people saying yes. Okay, yeah. Yes, I can agree to that. It's going to create joblessness. Okay, but let me just look at inequality right now. So fear for job losses, and it's going to create some kind of inequality. I think everybody agrees on that it is certainly going to create some kind of inequality for people, because yes, exactly. So Aman was saying that more skilled people will probably have better paying jobs, and then there will be some people who probably are not able to match up to the current requirements of industry 4.0, will probably feel left out and probably will not have those kind of opportunities. So that's how this big data increases or decreases inequality. Let's look into that. So there are some positive sides of that also. Let's just look at that first, and then we probably will come to the negative side. So the big data can lower the cost of basic goods and services. So now big data, because now that is one thing, because let's say anything you want to understand about probably a demography. So then the country needs to do a lot of economic survey, they needs to do a lot of survey and all of that, and a lot of cost is involved there. So now that can be done at a very, very lower cost, and plus the data will be dynamic, it will be more accurate, reliable. So this big data is solving the problem there. Now big data should improve consumer protection and government decisions. So now it is bringing in more uniformity, so people can now have better access to jobs. Like, you can probably look at jobs online. It's like, you have access to so much of information, so you can make use of that. So that way it is bringing some benefits for the workforce. Big data and AI can make anti-poverty programs more efficient. So like, there can be targeted programs other than, just getting details from the survey data and then acting upon it. Now that can be more accurate, can be used by trying to understand from people's consumption behavior. Let's say people from a particular region have a certain kind of consumption behavior, are consuming really less. That means people at that region are not doing well, and they need some economic support. So these will not be manipulated, and they will be more reliable. Now let's look at the negative side. It can increase the economic rents for a small privileged group and induce skill biased technological change. So it will have a lot of a lot of cost to the people who probably are small in size. Like a lot of firms who are small in size and probably cannot afford to have those kind of skill sets and those kind of infra required. So the vast majority of large research databases display tractable data produced by rich English speaking groups with very little representation from less visible and more vulnerable groups. So now when we are going to rely, so now when let's come back to policy making. So now the government has to make some policies to for the welfare of the people. So for that they have been relying on the data which is being surveyed and which they get from the normal conventional surveys. Now after big data, so now they're moving on to big data to give these kind of insights, and then they make policies. Now this big data is actually coming from these smart devices which you are living in, right? But what about those people who probably are living in some tribal areas of Jharkhand, who are not having the access to these kind of smart devices? So they will not get that kind of representation which is required to address their needs. So that way it will probably have only the representation of rich people who have the resources, or probably the English speaking people who can make use of these smart devices, and their information can be collected, and eventually they can be used, or their information can be used for policy implications. Now, big data analytics may reduce the number of workers needed for the providing goods and services. So, I mean, a lot of you just mentioned, I mean, I cannot more agree on that. It's very simple and obvious. And then highly skilled versus workers with lesser skills. So now when you're moving to a big data, or probably a world where information is flowing like anything, and everyone is probably processing that information and making the right decision for the firm, how will a normal conventional firm compete with these kind of firms who have these kind of highly skilled workers who probably are techno managers? So that is why we currently require the kind of skill set which is catering to the very disruptive business environment we are living in. So that way it is going to create kind of some kind of inequality amongst the workers as well. Now moving on to why this big data is important. So big data refers to enormous data sets gathered from numerous sources, and these data sets cannot be collected, they can be stored or processed using any conventional tool due to their quantity and complexity. So they're so complex and so huge, they cannot be really collected or stored or processed. We do not have that kind of infra, or we do not have that kind of, because it's constantly getting created with the help of big data. So I cannot today just, feel like downloading all that big data on my laptop. I cannot do that. I probably will require some kind of infra for doing that kind of study. So with the help of big data analytics tools, we can gather different types of data, and once analyzed, this data helps in a multitude of ways. It has enormous scope to help healthcare, banking, environment, science, management, manufacturing, transportation, and logistics sector. So for example, for science, Event Horizon Telescope project, which was so much in news in 2019, it was only because of the help of big data we could get the first ever image of black hole. So that is the kind of role it is playing in our lives at the various dimensions, like I just mentioned. Now, moving on to, is big data. Now, moving on to the another interesting question, like when when you're all looking at the business education and all of that, we all at the end of day interested in business. So, is big data primarily for business use? So, was it like just started for business use, or it has any other benefits as well? So now, to answer that, let's look at several things. So the internet companies such as Google, Amazon, and Facebook firms in every sector of the economy now routinely collect and aggregate data on their customers and their internal businesses. So these were the few large firms who actually started with with this big data, and they started collecting information, and then they started acting upon those kind of information. So now we have these kind of details available. Besides, there are these banks and these financial institutions who also make use of these big data for their business purposes. For example, if let's say I would, sometimes I get freaked out. So when I was a student, I was never getting a messages or any calls related to if I'm interested in buying a credit. Yeah. So we were talking about is big data primarily for business use, and we were talking about how these large firms, Google, Amazon, Facebook, or these financial institutions, they make the most out of the big data and how they act upon it and how they use it for probably maximizing their profits, or or increasing the scale of business. So that is how it is now. Now a special area of of use of these big data cases is for manufacturing, transportation, and logistics sector, and these sectors are undergoing a transformational change as a part of an industry-wide trend called Industry 4.0, and companies like Amazon have succeeded in solving private market problems using technology and data. In fact, if we talk about Amazon's model, they hired a lot of economists and data scientists to help solve huge logistic and economics problem using massive amount of data on what people want to buy and how to stock those inventories and so on and so forth. So that was about how beneficial it is for businesses. Now, moving on to the most favorite part of my most favorite part of big data. So how that can be used for bringing in the transformation as an economic researcher or a social scientist. So how is big data transforming economic research? So it has greater reliability than surveys, because if let's say I'm trying to understand the consumption pattern, like how much people are spending in the necessity items. So there, if I'm trying to understand, I'm asking in the survey, okay, how much you're consuming, it will be taxing for people to remember all of that and recall all of that, and then tell me the right information. It may so happen that they may be not interested in sharing that kind of information because of several biases they have in their mind, right? So it does not. But however, when I'm getting these kind of details, right from probably credit card transactions or any other ways. Probably people are buying groceries online based on that, so that will be much more reliable than the service. And then this data has the ability to measure new variables, for example emotions. So like I'm liking something on Facebook, or I'm tweeting something, or with help of all these social media, I'm spending this much amount of time on this particular window. So that all these things uh, help people to understand the emotions as well, which was not earlier possible with the conventional data sets. Now it also has the universal coverage. We can just zoom in to understand. Let's say I'm just particularly interested in knowing more details about the Western Rajasthan. Probably I can just zoom in and try to get more information on various variables for just particularly Western Rajasthan. So that is only possible because of the big data. It wouldn't have been possible in case of the conventional data. And then it is very large, it has very large samples. So earlier it was just representation, so you're just surveying some people who can represent the entire population. Now it can have larger sample, and it will be easy for us to approximate the scientific experiments as well, because scientific experiments for that matter require very high precision, and for that we need to have large samples. So now that is very much possible with the use of big data. Now moving on to now let me come to a very interesting example of how big data was used. So let me just come to that gradually. So if this is an inflation graph for Argentina, and if we can see, this is annual inflation rate on the y-axis, and then we have years on the x-axis, and we can see that it was increasing at a very rapid rate from 2004 to 2016, right? So it crossed 10%. So that was the case what happened in Argentina in 2006. Now what happened was, when this kind of inflation, when the economy was experiencing this kind of inflation, what the government does, so it kind of alarmed in 2006. It kind of alarmed as soon as it reached a double digit. So it kind of alarmed the people at the government, and they realized they need to do something. So now they started questioning the statistics office, that how come this inflation figures are going so crazy. And rather they just didn't just question, they rather fired people for showing off such high rate of inflation. So they just said, fix this inflation rate. And surprisingly, or I would say some magic happened, and within no time the inflation rate started falling. So you can see, after 2006, government attempts to identify retailer samples, so the samples which were used to understand the inflation level, so they did that. And then National Statistics Office was intervened. They were fired for reporting such high inflation figures. And then overnight we see that inflation figure starts falling. Now there was a UG student, Alberto Cavallo, at Harvard, who felt that there's something fishy. It's really not possible that overnight the inflation starts falling. So he tried to understand the inflation level using the online prices. He used online prices, an alternative way to collect the price data. And surprisingly, his results are shown in this yellow line. If you can see, this yellow line is so much away from this line which was shown by the official figures about the inflation. So it was so much more. So that was the kind of, so he was a UG student studying at Harvard, and he was intrigued that how could this be possible. So he found this. Now what happened is he publishes this. Today, right now, he's an associate professor at Harvard, Professor Albert Cavallo, but then he was a UG student there. So now, then he was questioned that how is this possible? I mean, he started experiencing a lot of allegations and accusation for doing this kind of study and just unnecessarily blaming. So he did it for several other countries. So if you can see, he did a similar study for Venezuela, which was experiencing very high inflation then. But whatever inflation he predicted with the online figures using the big data, it was coming out similar to what the official figures were saying. Similar was the case for Colombia, Brazil, but you can see there was a huge drastic difference in case of Argentina. Argentina figures showed something else, and the online data which was used by Professor Albert Cavallo then was showing something completely different. So this is the kind of study he could do. So now this study has also taken a shape as the Big Billion Prices project. So an academic initiative to improve macroeconomic measurement. So initially we used to wait for CPI. It's coming, once in 2 weeks, and then it's not that updated data also. But now, using this scrapping technology, we can gather a lot of information online. We can connect to hundreds of online retailers and find individual prices of the products, and then store key items information in database, the items which are used to understand the price index, and then calculate inflation and other statistics. So that was what he did. And that's what was done for USA. And we can see for USA, this red dotted line is official figures, and this is billion prices project price index, which is more or less similar to official, but it is so much different in case of Argentina. So that is the kind of role it can play in today's world. I mean, it can give us the more reliable information, more dynamic one, the more current one. So now let me so that was about. So I hope in today's master class also we have some Albert Cavallo sitting and getting motivated with this kind of this kind of research, and then after some years we get to know that okay, that was one big research conducted. So I hope something of that sort happens. So now that was about few things I want to talk about big data. Now let me just come to the conclusion, or rather it's not conclusion. So rather it's the growing, so I'll just say a few things and then let's see what it is. So the growing use of digital transactions, the consumers, investors, taxpayers, as well as the rise of newer forms of data collection has the potential to revolutionize public policy, business decision making, products and processes. So the large scale administrative data sets and proprietary private sector data can greatly improve the way we measure, track, and describe economic activity. So there are several challenges: gaining access to data, developing the data management, programming capabilities needed to work with these kind of larger data sets. So we need to collaborate with people. So some people, so that's what I feel when I'm at a IITJ ecosystem. I may have that idea. I may be looking at the social problem, but I may not have that kind of right expertise or programming capabilities which can be used to process this big data. So that probably I can collaborate with another professor from probably a computer science department, and I can make use of. Similarly, if let's say somebody is at School of Management and Entrepreneurship, probably has had the right business idea but probably needs some technical expertise, probably you can collaborate with the people who have these kind of technical expertise. Let's say somebody from BTech, somebody from MTech, somebody who's doing a amazing PhD project, so that can be done when you're part of a very diverse ecosystem. You can find people from diverse expertise. So these can be addressed then. And finally, and most importantly, thinking of creative approaches to summarize, describe, and analyze the information contained in these data. So that's what was, and at the end of this class, you should be having certain questions to yourself, like, such as what kind of data can be utilized to solve a given problem. So you should, you should be having these numerous questions in your head, and you should see, okay, this is a problem. Can I get some data from somewhere which can put in some use and can resolve this problem? Or, for instance, studying the causal relation between school dropout rates and family income. So that can be one question. Similarly, you can have multiple questions. What problems can be solved using these new analytical tools from the managerial point of view? How can these technologies be harnessed to maximize profit and consumer welfare in a given business setting? So this, having this master class, the purpose was to, to leave you with lots of questions where you can, brainstorm and think how you can probably harness some data and, come up with some, some amazing information which can be put in use for addressing some societal problem or some business problem, or, things like that. So that was about it. I talk a lot, so I think I overshot the time, but I'll be happy to take some questions if there are any.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Akansha. So, to my understanding, this was a very impressive session altogether. So, people, either they come from a technology background where they have this knowledge of big data, or they come from, social science background who have more command over economics. But the way you have connected, so today, how we make the use of big data and other technologies in making the basic economic decisions, such as understanding your customer or taking appropriate decisions about the pricing of your product, and how this incorporation of big data and other technologies are bringing sort of inequality among the industry or workers and all those things. And I can see so many students have shared their responses on the chat, and they have very actively participated in this session. So now, so the stage is yours, students. You wish to ask anything, you may please use the chat box. Or is it okay, Akansha ma'am, if they can unmute and speak directly?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So I request the participants, if they have any doubt or if they
Ma'am,
wish to share anything. Yeah.
good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Actually, since past few weeks, I was trying to prepare a research paper. It was like my second or third, and I was trying to compare India's response during the global financial crisis and India's economic response to the COVID crisis. However, I was not able to find a good amount of research or any sort of data which would converge both of them. So, can you please suggest us various methods or ways to collect data first of all and then analyzing them?
Okay, so you mean to say various data as in big data, from the big data or from this conventional data forms?
Uh, Big data and conventional both.
Okay, so can you reach out to me? I'll probably share a link which is from ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, because they have a depository where you can find lots of data. So I can probably help you with that. So if you can reach out to me on my email, I'll be happy to share that with you.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am, and thanks for the wonderful insights. I would like to know, is there any mechanism to scrap the data which is not relevant?
Okay, so you're asking a social scientist if we can scrap the data. I wish I was capable enough to answer that question, that we can scrap the data, but it sometimes freaks me out also that a lot of data is going on. Sometimes sometimes it just so happens, I tell my friend that I want to buy this thing, and next day I see advertisements of that on my social media. So I sometimes, really freak out that I wish I could do something about it. But as of now, I'm finding myself incapable to answer this question, that if I can advise you, I mean, you need to probably interact with more professors at some IITs who probably have this kind of expertise, who can tell you more about like data, how that can be scrapped, or if it is really possible. So, but I'm sorry, I will not be able to help you on that.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Because I'm experiencing that because of lot of data, I'm not able to purchase anything from Amazon. Because
Okay.
when you keep trying to search for a particular product, but you get lot of suggestions that you think all are not relevant to me.
Right. So
Because of that.
it just confuses you, and you're
Yes,
not able
yes,
to finally buy the thing which you really wanted to.
yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a
Yeah.
sad, but that's a problem with everyone these days, I guess.
Good evening,
Thank you, ma'am.
good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, my
Yeah.
question is that just I got to know from you that after big data, there will be a difference in the skill set of laborers. Like we will require more skilled labor. So I want to know your perspective. That what do you think? Will it be good for our future, or will it be it will go in the bad way?
Okay. So now there are some things, there are some things which we predict, and then we can probably try to change also. So this is something which we are predicting, which everyone is predicting, that in the coming times, because the time is so disruptive, every day we are experiencing some change. So we definitely are going to experience a lot of change, and we cannot really control that. We have to now change ourselves so that we can adapt to that change. So now, like what we experienced during pandemic, we were not ready for this, working virtually, but we were pushed into that. So all those who could very well manage with that, they probably did a better job as compared to the other ones. So that way you are saying, if I could get your question correctly, that this it will require different kind of skill set to meet the requirements of the industry in the coming future or current as well. So that will lead to inequality. Yes, absolutely. So if I look at myself today, so if I just keep doing if I just keep doing research using conventional data set in a silo, probably I'll also kind of, my work will also get obsolete, or probably I'll also not be able to compete with the researchers across the globe who are probably working on the newer data set, or probably who are using big data in collaboration with probably who have the technical expertise and all of that. So that way, that is why probably IIT Jodhpur is creating that niche, that we are not just creating managers, we are creating techno managers who are going to be fit for the industry 4.0. So that's how you have to probably adapt to the new environment you're living in. You have no choice.
Okay. So means you are trying to say that it will be good for the in future. Means uh, we have to adopt according to the situation. We have to adapt according to the situation.
Right. So because there is going to be such drastic difference between the skill set, so you will be required to have different range of skill set. And if you have that, you probably will have ample opportunities, because that is what the time will require. And if you don't have, you probably will find it difficult in the industry to survive. So that is what is the need of time. So it may work out very good for the people who are probably working on getting that skill set, and it may work out in a very bad way for those people who are going for conventional ways, or who probably are not meeting with the current requirements.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
So I can see a question from the chat box, which goes like this. So Lokesh wants to ask, how can we ensure the data quality?
Okay. So, okay, look, Lokesh, that was a very interesting question. So how do we ensure the data quality? Now, if let us say somebody is asking me, what are you consuming? I may have a choice to say the right or the wrong answer, right? I may just say, I might have social desirability bias. So I may be just spending probably rupees 100 every day on something, but because I have a social status to maintain, so I may just say, okay, I'm spending 500 rupees every day on this. But when you're actually getting the data from your credit card, or when you're actually looking at the data, you're collecting it from the sources, right sources, then you probably do not you will have a more reliable, more accurate, and more precise data. So that way big data is precise, reliable, and it's actually measuring your movements, your transactions, your emotions. So there cannot be anything more reliable, more accurate, more precise than that.
Ma'am, but when I just compared those inflation indexes and other data sets which are available on World Bank and macro trends and all those similar major sites which provide big data, all of them means they do not match with each other usually.
Okay, so they do not match with each other usually. If they're not matching little bit here and there, that is fine. If they're not matching on a very large scale, like what happened with the data given by Argentina officials' websites, and then the research conducted by Professor Alberto Cavallo, then there is something there. That if you're finding such
Yeah,
huge differences, then you definitely should dig deeper and try to understand what exactly is wrong or why it is so different. So that should, as a curious student, you should always be a curious student all your life. So it should question you that why it is so.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kansha ma'am, for the response.
So
So
can I
just saw
add
some. Yeah. Please go ahead. Please go.
a minute or so?
Sure.
Really sorry for disturbing you, sir, cutting you off in the middle. And I don't know how legitimate my question is, but I'm just gonna ask it because I am also involved in it. So basically, if you see a product, so you are attracted towards it, but before being actually attracted towards it, you have to see a video or maybe a product description about it, right? So for example, if I see iPhone, so before getting attracted to the phone, I have been, exposed to the information, everything that about the Apple and the phone. So, what about big data in videos, in the stuff that actually tells you about the product, to be actually attracted towards it? So, for example, I have a YouTube account and we have videos. So, how to share those videos with big data so that actual customer gets attracted towards it?
Okay, so I'm not sure, Aman, if I got your question correct, but you're probably asking how your YouTube content is probably more visible to probably larger people. Because see, big data is nothing. Like now we're talking and it's getting somewhere stored. That's also big data. That's, you probably don't need to put in any extra effort to contribute your data to big data. Anything and everything which is getting stored, which is getting collected digitally, is a part of big data. You may have access to some part of that, somebody else may have access to some other part of that. So that is how it is. But I think you probably wanted to ask how can probably you have probably a better viewership for your YouTube content, or I don't know if I got your
Yeah.
question correct.
Yeah, I think that was my question. So, how big data can help in that? Is there
Okay,
a
how big data can help you with that? See, I'm not a YouTube expert probably, but I can just probably give you an example from whatever insight I have. So, like, how it works from Instagram, you add a lot of hashtags, so you kind of increase the viewership for your post. So similarly, probably, something of that sort, right keywords. So you use the right keywords, and probably the time, and probably things of that sort will probably help you to reach out probably a larger audience.
Yes, right. The keyword approach.
Yeah, that's what I think. I'm not an expert on that. It's just probably from whatever understanding I have.
No problem. Thank you, ma'am.
So students are shooting questions like anything. Yeah, so we have another question from Aditya Singh. So he says, ma'am, in near future, we can expect that data regulation would take place as to get the right data. Yeah, so certainly there are regulations, and it will become more and more tough when people make misuse of the data. So increase targeted marketing, keyword approach. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or anything to share from our participants?
Oh, it was lovely interacting with everyone. I absolutely loved talking to the participants. In fact, I've been interacting with some of them in those interaction sessions. So it was absolutely amazing. And I always, like to spend time with the curious mind who asks too many questions, and it kind of, gives me also insights. So it's a learning experience for both of us, the students as well as for me. So I absolutely loved it, and I would like to thank all the participants for being such a great audience, for such patiently listening, and then coming up with interesting questions and insights. So it was an amazing experience for me. Thank you, Professor Abhishek, for giving me this opportunity to conduct this session.
Thank you so much, Professor Akansha. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this session number 8 of our Tech MBA Masterclass conducted by School of Management and Entrepreneurship, IIT Jodhpur. So in case you have further, queries or any questions regarding this beautiful session, you may please feel free to send emails. We'll try to get back to you as early as possible. All our email IDs are there on IIT Jodhpur's website. So please feel free to get in touch with us, and looking forward to meeting you all. Thanks everyone for your time, and please enjoy your day.
Thank you,
So
guys. Thank
once
you,
again,
everyone.
Professor
Have a
Akansha.
wonderful weekend.
Yeah,
Okay, bye-bye.
thank you so much, everyone.